7 candidates, 1 seat. The Honolulu Prosecutor's Office has been rocked by a recent corruption scandal. Now the race is on to replace City Prosecutor Keith Kaneshiro. Only 3 men have ever been elected as Honolulu's prosecuting attorney, so a fresh face will take over the office. The candidates will address issues like the criminal justice system, public trust, and victims' rights. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Election 2020 on Insights on PBS Hawaii start now. Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Laura Yamada. Well, there is a crowded field of candidates trying to become Honolulu's next elected prosecutor. 7 candidates in all, none of whom have held elective office before. If none of the candidates get a majority of the votes in the primary election in August, the top 2 vote-getters will face off in the general election in November. All 7 candidates running for this seat are joining us via the internet. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. All right, now to our guests. The order of introduction was determined by random drawing. Anosh Yaqoob is a practicing criminal law attorney in Honolulu. Dwight Nadamoto is the acting prosecuting attorney for the city and county of Honolulu. Megan Kau is a trial attorney in civil litigation, personal injury cases, and felony criminal matters. Jacquie Esser is a career public defender. Tae Kim is a practicing criminal law attorney in Honolulu. Steve Alm is a former Honolulu Circuit Court judge and a former deputy prosecutor in Honolulu. And RJ Brown is a civil litigator and also a former deputy prosecuting attorney in Honolulu. All right, now before we get started, we want to share with everyone that Insights is designed as a discussion during which guests are asked questions posed by us and also by you, our viewers. So to get to as many issues as possible, we've asked our guests to keep answers succinct. Now, if we feel a guest is running long or stepping on another guest, we will interrupt verbally and visually, and if that doesn't work, we may resort to this. Okay, with that in mind, all right, let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so here's the first question. Is there a transparency and accountability problem in the prosecutor's office? And if so, if you are elected, name the first thing that you would do to change that. Who would like to start?
Hi, I'm sorry. Was that question directed at someone specifically?
This is for everyone to answer. Maybe, Megan, why don't we start with you?
Thank you, Laura. Yes, based on the current administration's misconduct or alleged misconduct, there has been a transparency issue. And what I would do is I would answer every single question that is asked. I currently do that. I answer my regular cell phone number, my campaign cell phone number. I get hundreds of text messages and emails each day, Facebook messages, DMs, and I answer every single question. And I think that people just want to have answers.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Whoa. Dwight. Of course, we disagree with that. I have people in my office whose sole responsibility is answering questions from the public. Whenever a media source asks us for a...
Anosh, why don't we go ahead and let finish us
for an interview, we do the interview. We put out press releases.
Yeah, right.
If a public person calls us, that's what we do. I do not believe that there is a transparency problem in...
That's why Steve Levinson just resigned from the police commission.
We'd like to have everyone, if they can finish their question or their answers first, that would be great.
Steve Levinson has nothing to do with...
My name is Anosh. Anosh.
Anosh.
Steve Levinson and the other person resigned from the police commission because of transparency issues. Where is this question even coming from? Because of their resignation.
Maybe if we could take the picture off of Anosh's personal situation, I think it's completely clear that regardless of the efforts that Mr. Nadamoto is making to increase transparency of the office, there is a total loss of public trust in what's going on there. And whoever the candidate is that's going to be elected, the first thing that they should do is go in and audit that office. Open up the books. Let's look at the dispositions. Let's look at the cases that have been charged. What prosecutors have been assigned to them. Sir, can you just hold on one moment? And then what we can do is release those results to the public and ultimately allow the public to see what's been going on. That's the only way that we're going to get that fresh start to get into a new direction.
You know,
I absolutely agree.
The integrity of the office.
Mr. Nadamoto, Mr. Nadamoto,
I have encouraged all the deputies and the staff to report any suspicious behavior or anything like that. You know, we have an anonymous tip box. We have an anonymous hotline in which they can call.
Keith
We have done a lot of things. We have created, we have formalized our conflict of interest policies. We have installed encryption devices so we can monitor and control and make sure that sensitive information is not going out. You know, regarding plea agreements, they are looked upon by multiple individuals. So, you know, integrity is very important, and we are doing the best we can to fix that.
Look, the reason why we are where we are with the prosecutors, the problem is that they have not been operating transparent and being held accountable. And that needs to change. We need to adopt the transparency prosecutor.
Hold on one second, Jackie, if you don't mind.
Policies.
One second, Jackie.
Will be
Anosh, if you don't mind, we're going to get to you. One second. Anosh, one second. We do want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to finish their answers. If we could, we're going to have time for a discussion, and we're also going to have time for you to answer as well. So if we could, otherwise it makes it difficult to hear what everybody is saying if we continue to talk over one another. So hold your thoughts for a minute, Anosh, and we will get to you in just a moment. Jackie, go ahead.
Thank you, Laura. So right now, the prosecutor's office operates in a black box. It does not operate with transparency, and it is not being held accountable. And we can change that by adopting the Prosecutor Transparency Act, which I fully support. And even if it's not passed, I will put all of our major policies online. I've been doing that throughout my candidacy. I have been very bold, upfront with my policies. I will operate the same as prosecutor. We need a participatory prosecutor office where the public can engage with the prosecutor's office. There needs to be responsive by the administration, and I will bring that to the prosecutors.
What do you mean when you talk about prosecutorial transparency? Exactly what is that nebulous term you are talking about?
When you decide to charge someone.
When we charge a case, our charges are based upon the evidence. It's just based upon the evidence. We charge the offense which we believe we can prove beyond a reasonable doubt.
The public,
you can go to the grand jury and get it. There is no problem with that.
All right, everyone. I want to give some of the other candidates a chance to speak. Okay. I want to give other candidates a chance to speak. So if you can hold your thoughts for just a moment, please. I want to go ahead and have Tae share his thoughts. Go ahead, Tae.
Thank you, Laura. You know, when I first started out campaigning, or at least looked into running for this office, people have often asked me, how can we ever trust the prosecutor's office again? I mean, that's the echoing question throughout the island. You know, whichever neighborhood I would go, they would ask the same question. How do we ever trust the prosecutor's office again? And one thing, and this is not anything directly derogatory or offensive towards Dwight. I like Dwight. I've worked with Dwight. He's an upright guy. But having been handpicked by Keith Kaneshiro to lead the office, we need at least some answers as to what happened. At least an explanation to the public. At least explain to the public circumstances behind it, at the very least. And Dwight had been the acting prosecutor for almost 18 months now. And I know he's doing his best, but we need accountability. We need some of the answers looked into and discussed with the people, because people are in dire need of wanting answers as to why we can't trust the prosecutor's office.
Now, Dwight, I know that a lot of this is directed at you, so I'm going to give you a chance to respond in a minute, but I want to make sure that we get to everyone here. So, Steve, go ahead.
This election is all about restoring trust to the prosecutor's office. And I think it's incumbent on the voters to select somebody who has the experience and proven record of not only being a prosecutor, but leading a team, hold it, Anosh, leading a team of prosecutors in order to lead with ethics and restore trust to that office. The other thing the public's looking for is who has a proven record to use innovative solutions to reduce crime. That will bring the public's trust back, and I have a record of doing that. Thank you.
Anosh, go ahead, and this is your opportunity to speak succinctly about what your thoughts are. Go ahead, Anosh.
I'm sorry, who is that? First, I need to just tell all of the people who voted for me, thank you. Back in 2016, when I was the only one in the arena against the bad guys, against Keith Kaneshiro and the Kealohas, any vote for Kaneshiro was a vote for the Kealohas because he attached himself to them. Not 1 inch of daylight between any of them. So for me, this is vindication. I want to say thank you to all the people who voted for me because I know everyone was mocked and denigrated and put down. And you know what? We were vindicated. That's great. Secondly, you don't have to become captivated and mesmerized and totally hypnotized by this idea of experience. Now we got Calvin Stay coming back, and we got Mufi coming back, and we got all these people. We don't need that. We don't need any more relics from the past. We don't need any more dinosaurs. We don't need anything vestigial. We need something new, finally. New blood, okay? Something else. I was the only one. Where the hell did all these people come from? Why did all these people decide all of a sudden they want to be the Honolulu City Prosecutor?
Anosh, we do want to maintain a little level of integrity here. So
once he got ousted from office, right? Nobody wanted to take him on when he was the Colossus, when he was the big deal, when he had
all right. We want to keep this a fair discussion.
Then nobody wanted to take him on,
if you can keep it a little bit succinct, thank you very much. So let's move on. So let me ask a question that kind of has to do. Thank you. So let me move on to another question, and that I think delves a little bit into the areas that some of the prosecutor's attorney's office deals with. So maybe I'll start with you first, RJ, on this one. In what areas are the prosecuting attorney's office, do you feel, falling most short? For example, in areas of domestic violence, elder abuse, cybercrime. What are your thoughts in response to that question?
You know, at the end of the day, it's about where are you establishing your priorities, and that's with respect to financially and your talent. And, you know, prior to the COVID outbreak, what we saw was a significant increase in violent crime. And we need to focus on those types of offenses. Violent offenses, serious offenses against victims where you've got burglaries, robberies, that type of thing. That's where I'd like to get the bulk of our resources, the bulk of our talent, and focus on those to make sure that we're winning those trials. You know, right now, the way the prosecutor's office is set up, you've got very large divisions, like the felony trials divisions that handles everything from murder down to drug possession. If I was ultimately elected, what I'd like to do is create smaller, more specialized divisions, a homicide division, a burglary division, a robbery division. Let's make sure that we get the deputies the training that they need so that when they get those cases, they understand the issues, they understand the cases, and they're winning the cases that have to be won.
Why don't we turn to you, Tae? Let's go to you next. Your thoughts, again, I'm going to repeat the question. In what areas are the prosecuting attorney's office, do you feel, falling most short? Domestic violence, abuse, cybercrime, sexual assault. Your thoughts?
You know, the public safety, the foundation of public safety is people being informed of what's happening in criminal justice system. And I believe that's lacking. There is no foundation. So people have been in the dark as to what's happening. So I would say within the first 100 days, I would establish community sections to get the people involved and hold open houses, regular open houses at the prosecutor's office. People have to be involved in public safety. Law enforcement cannot, by itself, achieve public safety. So I'm all for getting the people involved If people are involved, there's an oversight, and there will be accountability. And the more the people know, the more power to them. It is an elected office by the people, and it should be for the people.
Let's go ahead and turn it to Jacquie. Jacquie, your response to that question.
Thank you, Laura. And Anosh, I'm going to ask you not to interrupt me, please. The problem with the prosecutor's office is that it criminalizes homelessness, mental illness, and substance use treatment. We have to stop that. By doing that, we can focus on the serious, violent crimes, the crimes that matter most to communities, ensure just convictions, and we also can reallocate resources to be meaningful, provide meaningful treatment to crime victims. And we can offer restorative justice and wraparound services for victims. And by diverting homelessness, mental illness, and substance use to community-based services, we are safer in the long run. We will have less victims. And so it has to be a reallocation, and we have to start treating mental illness and addiction for what it is, a public health issue.
Steve, why don't I turn to you?
Okay, before I was appointed as the United States Attorney, I was at the Honolulu Prosecutor's office for 9.5 years. That's where I learned to be a supervisor. I was a felony team captain, and then I was head of the District and Family Court Division. And there I stressed we have to create a culture of doing justice and not just winning cases. So that would have to be applied to the whole office. And then in order to do that, you've got to institute training. I set up training course on Saturday morning for the deputy prosecutors over in district court in their suits. They've talked about it since then, how much they learned from it. There have to be more training throughout the office. This will upgrade the skills. It will upgrade the morale of deputies throughout the office, and then they're going to be able to pay more attention to the victims, learn how to use victims in the cases, how to do better in domestic violence, how to do better in all of the areas. It's an office-wide approach. It's an attitude approach, and I've been there. I've done that. We can do it again.
Megan, let's turn to you.
Thank you, Laura. Your question was, what charges are we going to focus on if we become the prosecutor? My answer is that I am the only candidate that has taken the most aggressive stance against crime, and I will charge all charges, low level, mid level, and high level. And the reason why we need to charge low level crimes is because defendants have become more and more brazen, more and more brave, and extremely violent. And what happens is if they're charged with unauthorized control of a propelled vehicle and they're released, what they do is they continue to recommit. So by the 10th time they've stolen a car and they haven't been charged, they become more brave and more brazen. And so what happens is, and this is the problem, they become more violent. So let's say the 12th, 13th, or 14th time that they steal a car and a victim comes up to him and says, wait a minute, please do not steal my car, and intervenes. Now that defendant is going to punch this person in the head, stab the person, hold him up with a gun, because he's become more and more brazen, and more brave and more violent. So I would take an extremely aggressive stance against all crime, including low, mid, and high-level charges.
Anosh, why don't we turn to you? You want to go ahead and respond to the question is, in what areas are the prosecuting attorney's office falling most short in your opinion? For example, domestic violence, elder abuse. Your thoughts?
The first area that the prosecutor's office is failing in is public trust. Okay? Nobody can trust any of these candidates. They all jumped in after Kaneshiro was ousted. Okay, that's the first thing. While there are other issues, concerning assault and domestic violence and whatnot, people have to trust that the person there isn't crooked. Now, here, I need to respond to something. There is no reason why, when Peter Carlisle is not qualified to be on the ballot, he should be trying to go to the circuit court and get the court to put him on the ballot and say that I'm bigger than the rules. The rules don't have to apply to me. In the time of Kaneshiro, in the time of the Kealohas, to say I'm bigger than the rules. And Megan Kau was the one who was there filing it for him. I mean, we don't need Carlisle's boy. We don't need Kaneshiro's boy. We don't need any randos. What we need is somebody who voters can trust is, in fact, the person with the right moral compass. And that was me, because I took him on in 2016 when he was the colossus. Everybody who voted for me was mocked and denigrated and made fun of. But we were right. We were right. Everybody who voted for me, look at the smile on my face from ear to ear. Our wildest dreams came true. Because when you run against somebody and then they mock you and they put you down, and then
so I want to go ahead and move on now and try to be respectful of everyone's time. You know, thank you very much. I appreciate that. What we haven't gotten to yet is Dwight. So I want to go ahead. One moment, please, just to make sure we get a chance to have everybody respond. Dwight, go ahead. I'd like to give you a chance to respond.
Thank you, Laura. The two things I see most important today are domestic violence, drugs. Regarding domestic violence, I have hired, and he has been training my deputies since the beginning of the year, Scott Kessler. He is the former Bureau Chief of Queens in the domestic violence era. His methods of prosecuting domestic violence have been adopted by the federal government. Mr. Kessler has been working with one of my deputies, and we are trying to create a law which makes domestic violence easier to prosecute. Hopefully it would have passed this session, but because of the COVID things, we are hopeful that if it doesn't pass this session, we'll pass next session. And one of the other major problems I see is ICE. In 2009, we had 37 ICE-related deaths. In 2019, it rose to 107. 129 of those are in Hawaii. Recently, before the legislature, was a bill to make less than 2 grams of ice a misdemeanor. Nobody opposed that bill of the candidates except myself. We get approximately 500 ICE cases a day of a small amount.
That's exactly the problem.
If that bill passed,
what does that have to do with anything?
We will have more addiction. We will have more deaths. Now, Ms. Esser is trying to intimate that people go to jail for low levels of ICE. That's not true. They go to jail because of the crimes they commit because they need ICE. I've looked at the stats. I've looked at the convictions.
Jackie, I'll give you an opportunity in just a minute.
We need to get a hold of our ICE problem.
Now, we need to get to some viewer questions shortly here, but if anybody wants to respond with a brief response, please go ahead.
What Mr. Nadamoto is talking about is exactly why we are where we are. We cycle people through our jails and prisons. We provide no treatment. You can invest in the same old, or you can start investing in our communities. It is time we start treating addiction, and we do that by diverting people out of the criminal justice system, stop criminalizing.
We all know all this.
Provide treatment.
The stuff that's happening in the news now.
Mass incarceration has destroyed our families, our communities, and lives for generations, and we will continue to do it until we start investing in communication and in communities and education. And we can do that today by a vote for Jacquie Esser.
I think, Laura, you got to ask the question, when did you all decide to even try to run for this office? Where were you in 2016?
We're going to go ahead and move on to some viewer questions now. So here's a question from Stephanie from Twitter. She says, what are your views on hashtag defund the police and hashtag police reform?
My view is that defund the police is not really about defunding the police. It's about reallocating resources, and that's an easy answer. That's not hard. That just means we got to give more money to health and human services, mental health, and other kinds of topics that the police really aren't equipped or trained to deal with. That's easy. That's not hard.
I'd like to give others a chance to respond.
Okay, let's not forget, Laura, that it was not more than 2 months ago that our violent crimes were way up, that people were asking former police officers. While I agree that there has been some horrendous things happening on the mainland, and by the way, I have prosecuted police officers. I prosecuted a police officer who was the head of a burglary wing in Hawaii. I took that case to trial, and I did the appeal. So while police officers have done horrible things on the mainland, I believe that our police officers here,
Steve, I saw you raise your hand there, Steve. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's no question that the police here are doing one of the toughest jobs out there. And they have been asked to cover everything that happens, whether it's mental health issues, whether it's homeless issues and otherwise. So I think they would welcome the help from other experts to try to work together to solve problems. Captain Lambert has been very creative in what he's doing, but we need to have a community-wide effort to help things like the homeless and to work with HPD to solve problems. They cannot be asked to solve everything. They're there to help us when there's violence, to help us when we're being attacked. They run when there's gunfire, they run toward it, everybody else runs away. I don't think they'd object at all to getting more help to deal with these issues. Thank you.
So I'm going to get to some other viewer questions now. One moment, please, Anosh. I'm going to get to one moment, please. I'm going to get to some other viewer questions, and I'm going to ask individuals. And if you have a little bit of a response to a previous question, please feel free to add your comments as well as but keep in mind we're trying to keep this relatively succinct so everybody can have a chance to respond. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe ask this one to Megan. This is from Kanani on Facebook. She says, "Do you believe systemic racism exists within the HPD and justice system? If so, how would you address that?"
No, I do not believe that systemic racism exists in the criminal justice system in Honolulu. I do not believe that police officers intentionally go after Hawaiians and pull over Hawaiians over non-Hawaiians and charge Hawaiians over non-Hawaiians. I believe that other candidates have used the fact that Hawaiians are overrepresented in jail systems or in our facilities to use a platform to gain popularity. And that would be the same thing as saying, well, men are overrepresented in our detention facilities over women. And so the question then is law enforcement specifically going after men over women? And the answer to that question is no. The prosecuting attorney's job is to objectively apply the criminal laws that exist as they were passed by the legislature. The prosecutor does not make law. The prosecutor only executes law. And therefore, if you objectively apply the law to everybody, whether male or female, Hawaiian or non-Hawaiian, homeless or not homeless, and you are doing your job as a prosecuting attorney.
One other thing nobody remembers is that the victims of
and so I'm going to go ahead and ask one other person this question.
I'm sorry, I would like to respond to that.
Go ahead,
blind objectiveness that Ms. Kau is talking about has been used as a weapon against our most vulnerable communities for generations, and it needs to stop. Systemic racism absolutely exists. It's the reason why I can get pulled over and not have my driver's license on me, and I get a warning. When my Micronesian client not only gets a ticket, he gets arrested and he's put in jail, and bail is set that he cannot afford.
I know about systemic racism, too.
It is
well acquainted.
It's going to take true transformational change to HAWAI'I the system. I have been fighting for these reforms my entire legal career. I'm fighting for them right now, and I am prepared to do that as Honolulu Prosecutor.
I'm going to move on to another viewer question. Again, just to remind all of you, if I don't ask you this question specifically, just take a mental note. And if you feel you want to respond to a question that wasn't asked directly of you, you can go ahead and tag on to the question that I direct at you. So just keep that in mind. Feel free to add some extra thoughts. I'm going to send this one over to RJ. This is from Trent on Facebook. He says, how do you plan to implement your proposed changes in the legal system if it contradicts or bends existing laws?
I don't think you can contradict or bend the existing laws. You've got to work within the confines of the laws. Look, at the end of the day, every individual here, we're lining up to be the prosecutor. I'm not lining up to create laws. I'm lining up to enforce the laws, and that's the job, period. Now, that said, there's a great deal of discretion that comes with being a prosecuting attorney. So, look, my obligation is to review evidence, make a charging decision, try the case, and if you're found guilty, to recommend an appropriate sentence, and that is where I see the great amount of discretion that you can apply. How can we get this person help? Is incarceration absolutely necessary? Can we get him out of the criminal justice system? Can we push him into a diversion program? Can we get him into treatment? That's where I see my ability as a prosecutor to get the job done correctly. But to the extent that I would say, there are those candidates within the group that would come out and say they're strictly not going to follow a particular law or not work with a particular agency because of some political issue. I find that completely inappropriate.
I'm going to go ahead and throw this over to Tae first, if you want to go ahead and respond to that. Again, this is Trent's asking, how do you plan to implement, this is the way that he is asking the question, how do you plan to implement your proposed changes in the legal system if it contradicts or bends existing laws? Tae?
You know, we have to start with the existing law. And if it contradicts or in any way impedes existing law, we have to do it the right way. When I say we need to get people involved, people have to be informed of what contradicts, what impedes, what prevents current law, and whether there are need for change. And we can't do it alone. And prosecutor's job is not to amend or contradict. Prosecutor's job is to apply the law as it is, as it currently stands. Now, real quickly on the systemic racism, I do believe with this diverse culture, even with our diverse culture, one of the most diverse culture melting pots in the world, people have their own biases. It's systemic because it didn't happen overnight. You know, it's over a period of decades, generations. People have their own biases. Asians have biases among Asians, Caucasians as well. To say that there is no biases and prejudices and preconceived notions and feelings and attitudes, that's completely false. We need to recognize it. We need to stand up against it. And sometimes it's not easy to spot. Sometimes it's not easy to recognize. And we need to actually be mindful. And as a prosecutor, I will tell my deputies on a regular basis that we need to stand up for any kind of prejudices and biases. We don't play politics. This is fairness. It applies to everybody equally, and our job is to apply the law as it stands.
Thank you. And Steve, I saw you wave your hand there a little bit. And as I've mentioned to everyone, if you want to tag on a little bit, that's fine to a previous question. But I do want to make sure that we get through as many of these viewer questions as possible. So this one is actually directed to you. This is Joe from Honolulu. And he said, would Judge Alm be likely to increase the bail at arraignment or plea?
Yeah.
Well,
good question.
If that's the current thing and you're in there, and the person is really violent and dangerous and something has been missing, you would ask to increase the bail. But to go back to the question you just had, if there's a problem with the law, part of the job of the prosecutors is leadership to go to the legislature, go to city council, and change the law. But most of the time, you can use existing law. When I was the United States Attorney, I led a law enforcement effort in Chinatown and Kalihi Palama, and in 3 years, we reduced crime by 70%. 70%. It changed the character of both neighborhoods, and that allowed people to start businesses.
What year was that?
It allowed people to be safe. Local people wouldn't want to go downtown. They wouldn't want to park their cars. They thought they'd get assaulted. So when you work together and collaborate and work hard, you can get almost anything done. Thank you.
Now, Anosh, I do want to turn this to you in a minute, but I just want to also let you know.
Anosh, yes.
Anosh, yes. There have been some complaints from viewers. I just want you to keep in mind that this, viewers are watching this and they're making some judgments as to which candidates that they would like in this position. So please keep that in mind as to how you might be coming off to the public who is viewing this right now. Okay, just to keep that in mind. So I want to go ahead and turn the next question over.
Systemic racism earlier. I understand systemic exclusion. I've been systemically excluded a number of times, and I need to say what I need to say. And, I was asking, what year was the thing he's talking about? When did that even happen? Was that 40 years ago? Was that in the 80s? Like, do we really need that anymore? I mean, come on. I mean, do we need to bring back more people from the past?
We always need to reduce crime. That's a constant. I've done it before. I'll do it again.
No, do we need to keep bringing back and electing people from the past?
Thank you.
Laura, I just wanted to ask, if you would have asked him, what year was the thing he was describing?
I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question, if you don't mind. We want to make sure that we give everybody a chance. So, Dwight, I'm going to direct this to you. If elected, how are you going to work with the FBI to prosecute those using ID theft to obtain money through the CARES Act and through stimulus?
You know, we've already worked carefully with the federal government. In fact, while I was prosecutor, we had something which is called intelligence-based prosecution. But that is when we target a group or when we concentrate our resources on a group of people who are committing the majority of the crime. So we concentrate our forces on those people. And what HPD did, they came to me and said, let's concentrate on these people. I assigned two of my best deputy prosecuting attorneys to those cases. We were able to, when they reoffended, put them back in jail. When they reoffended, put them back in jail. And the leader of that group, we were able to send to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and he prosecuted them. And once the leader was gone, once the head is cut off, everything started to fall. I mean, I've worked well with the U.S. Attorney, and I've worked well with HPD. So what you do is you kind of do a joint task force, and that's how you would approach this. I mean, the U.S. Attorney or the feds, they can take the cases where they will get the most bang for the buck, and we can take the other keys. But the important thing is, you know, we have a lot of power. We have a lot of the laws in our favor for the local type of crimes, and so it's good for us to work together.
All right, thank you, Dwight. So let me ask this question from David, and maybe we'll start with Jacquie on this one. And again, I just want to keep reminding everybody, I'm giving everybody a little bit more homework to remember the questions that have been asked before in case you want to respond to those as well. That's going to be your opportunity. So this question is from David. He says, programs that mention treatment. How do you plan to fund those treatments?
By ending cash bail is one way. We spend $198 per day to house someone in our jail, and our jails are filled with people who do not need to be there. We spend over $209,000 every single day jailing people because they do not have the money to post bail. So that's one example. By diverting crimes that stem from poverty, mental illness, and addiction out of the criminal justice system, we also are saving money. And we can work with community-based organizations to provide wraparound services to give people the treatment that they need. And we will have less crime because of that. And so when you think about the collateral consequences of the victims that we're saving in the future and the crimes that we're preventing from happening, we are saving millions of dollars.
I'm going to send this one over to Dwight, if you want to go ahead and pick up on that.
You know, first of all, low-level drug dealers are not going to prison. The only people who go to prison are people who have gone to prison not because of drugs, but because drugs make them commit these crimes. Over and over again,
you can tell that to my clients in jail, in prison right now.
Over and over again, I've looked at those cases. And the reason they go to jail is because of the burglaries, because of the thefts, because of the robberies they commit. Let's face it. Back in 2016, the legislature, with the blessing of the judiciary, made repeat violent drug offenders probationable. Judge Alm led that push. You cannot tell me that low-level drug dealers are going to prison when they even allow repeat violent drug offenders to be eligible for probation. You're not going to save any money. The people in prison have committed crimes. Not just a minor offense of a possession. They've committed burglaries, they committed thefts, they committed robberies. Nobody goes to prison for just having a small amount of ice. And if that bill passes, making less than 2 grams, a misdemeanor, you're going to have more violence, you're going to have more addiction, you're going to have more crime.
Judge Alm,
what he just said shows his lack of experience in the courtroom. There are thousands of people right now in our prisons for a possession offense. And that is the problem with using criminal justice issues for medical issues like this. We need to divert to treatment because what happens is if they get probation, but they keep using drugs, eventually they will go to prison. There are thousands of people right now in our prisons who have never received treatment, and we're going to open the doors and they're going to go out and they will reoffend and recycle.
I want to give some others a chance to respond. Go ahead, Steve.
I was asked to chair the Penal Code Review Committee in 2015, 29 members, defense attorneys, prosecutors, and one of the problems, in contrast to what Mr. Nadamoto was saying, is possession of a small amount of drugs at that time was still part of repeat offender sentencing. So judges did not have discretion. At the second time they had one of those cases, they had to give them the 5 years in prison. What this committee recommended was leave it up to the discretion of the judge. If they're violent and dangerous, there are other reasons to lock them up, send them to prison. But if they have a drug problem, and that's the biggest part of it now, they have options to put them on probation. And research is clear that drug treatment is much more effective in the community than it is in prison. So it should be a case-by-case basis. And the year before we recommended that law change, 225 people were sent to prison for promoting dangerous drugs in the third degree. That's possession of a small amount. The year after it passed, that they were given discretion, it dropped to about 130. So giving judges discretion, listening to the prosecutor's defense, looking at a case on a case-by-case basis, that kept a lot of people out of prison and able to work on their drug problem on the outside where it's more effective. So you've got to base criminal justice decisions on data and research, not on anecdote, not on gut feeling, and not on we've always done it this way.
All right, so I want to give a chance to respond.
I disagree with that because the judge had a way to keep those offenders out. The judge first had to make a determination that the person was non-violent. After making that determination, the judge had to make a finding that he or she was going to go into a program that would help him take care of the drug abuse. So there was an option to that. And
Let me give some others a chance to respond. Megan, did you want to respond?
Your question, Laura, was how are we as the prosecutor going to help fund drug treatment programs? And the answer to that question is that the prosecutor does not have the authority to determine how the legislature will use its funds. However, a prosecuting attorney can educate the legislature as to what's going on in the criminal justice system and break down the criminal justice system so that they have a better understanding of where they should put their money. And that's what I would do.
All right, RJ, let me ask you this question. This is from Tom from Lapahoehoe. He says, if elected, how will you address overcrowding of prisons?
You know, I think this all kind of stems into what we've been talking about. And look, the reality is when I was a prosecutor, 90% of the cases that you deal with, they've got some connection to methamphetamine or other substance abuse. You just can't fight those statistics. And, you know, the problem where we're talking over each other, this is a chicken and egg thing. If we do not address the underlying addiction, you're going to continue to see more and more offenses take place. And there's going to be property offenses that are going to graduate and escalate into violent offenses. We have to 100% refocus the way that we're thinking about incarceration and the criminal justice system generally by getting these guys the help that they need. And the reality is they're not getting it inside HAWAI'I and they're not getting it inside OCCC. You've got to get them into treatment programs. You've got to get them the assistance that they ultimately need. Now, the reality is these addictions are so strong that, you know, you're not going to have a ton of success stories. But what I can guarantee you is that if you throw somebody into HAWAI'I and they've got an addiction problem and they're going away for 5 years or 10 years or 15 or whatever it is, these guys are not coming out in a better situation when they went in. Our community is not going to be safer if we're just saying, you know what, let's bang them, let's be tough on crime, let's throw away the key. That's not working. It hasn't been working, and you're seeing that with an increase in violence every single day. So we've got to think about this differently. You've got to bring a little bit of compassion, a little bit of morality, a little bit of understanding and empathy to the situation without losing sight that public safety is the #1 concern. But my feeling is if you do try to get these guys into treatment, if you do try to get them into help, you're going to see a reduction in the prison population numbers. You're going to see a reduction in crime. It's going to create a better situation across the board.
Anosh, let me turn this question to you. This is from Nico from Twitter. He says, what would you do to reduce the overrepresentation of Native Hawaiians and Micronesians in Honolulu's criminal legal system?
Well, I think a number of the candidates have made it clear, and, you know, they're accurate. They're not wrong. This isn't really the kind of thing that we can control. When, you know, crimes are committed, we have to prosecute them. And what this is really about is applying the law. It's not about making the law. We do our best to influence the law. When bills and measures come up at the city council and state legislature, the prosecutor's office is asked to submit testimony in support of or against those measures, and that's the most you can do. And then as the cases come up, you have to prosecute them, and you have to follow where the evidence will lead you. That's what that job is. That's what this is. So I can't really tell you what I could do to reduce the number of Micronesians being prosecuted, except what I do want to keep pointing out is the one thing when I talk to people that I can't seem to get anyone to ever say on their own is to recognize that the victims of the Kealohas were also Native Hawaiians. Native Hawaiians are also victimized. Why is there so much emphasis on Native Hawaiians being over-prosecuted when Native Hawaiians are actually the victims of many crimes? They deserve justice just the same as anyone else. You know what I mean? And more or less, I just, again, have to tell all my voters from 2016, good on you. Look at us now.
Thank you. All right. We haven't had a chance to hear from Tae in a little while. So same thing question about over-representation, reducing it, of Native Hawaiians and Micronesians in Honolulu's criminal legal system. Your thoughts, Tae?
Okay. Let me take a step back really quickly. Prosecutor's job, as I see it, it's not all about conviction. Prosecutor's goal is public safety. And I would agree with RJ and Ms. Esser that prevention goes a lot further for public safety than conviction and just locking them up. How are we prepared to prevent? What are we going to do to expand the rehabilitation and mental illnesses and to support people that need help? Help must be available. We can all agree that currently help is nowhere near available to everybody. There are programs, there are treatment centers, but are they equipped to provide the services? For one bed space, there are anywhere between 20 to 50 or people with drug and mental issues wanting to get in. We have to expand our rehabilitation and treatment programs, and we need to work on prevention. And how are we going to do that? We can't do public safety alone. Law enforcement cannot. We got to get people's involved, people's input, and what's troubling their community, and send the investigators out there, possibly before it happens. One less case in court, one less arrest, is one less person in prison. Now, getting back to Native Hawaiians, I do believe we need to be culturally sensitive, Micronesians to Native Hawaiians. I mean, growing up in Hawaii, having grew up in Hawaii, Hawaiians, and even Micronesians love their family. They care for their family. They value their culture. They're very prideful. And it's not an issue of that. It's an issue of educating from early on the importance of and recognizing law enforcement and respecting the law enforcement.
And I'm going to have you wrap it up just a little bit. Thank you, thank you. All right, let me ask this question to Jacquie, and this is from Alipate. Given the recent civil unrest with police departments across the country, if you're elected as Honolulu Prosecutor, how do you propose we move forward as a state?
One, we have to have meaningful police reform. And we can do that by stop sending our police officers to treat public health issues. If someone is having a behavioral health crisis, they do not need armed police to come who are not trained in de-escalating, who are not trained in providing service to someone who's in a mental health crisis. Likewise, if someone was having a seizure on the street, we wouldn't want armed police coming to that. We want doctors coming. We want behavioral health professionals. So one, and it's not, like Judge Alm said, it's not helping our police officers. We have to stop we don't want our police officers being those. Not only does it put our police officers being the front line in danger, it puts the community in danger. And so it's not collaborating with our police. We have to not send our police. We need to send behavioral health people when it's a behavioral health crisis. And so that's one way. Also, we cannot have, and I call upon all of you to not accept endorsements from police officer unions or money. We have to completely break the ties between prosecutors and police unions. When police are violent, if there's something seriously wrong with our system, when a police officer can commit domestic violence on video camera and not be arrested and charged with offense and keep his job, and the public never knows about it, he's still on the streets patrolling the community. This absolutely has to change,
so
and it will not happen if you have a prosecutor who is endorsed by the police union.
I'm going to go ahead. Steve, go ahead.
I was proud to get the police union endorsement. I know some of the other candidates here tried to get that endorsement as well. They recognized that I had the experience, I'm tough enough to prosecute cases and do it. And they knew that as U.S. attorney, I had prosecuted police officers for civil rights violations and prosecuted police officers for corruption. That's part of the deal. That's who I am, and what I continue to do the same thing as city prosecutor. Maybe with somebody else that would be affected by that, it doesn't affect me. Just like I'm proud to get that, I'm proud to get the endorsement as I've gotten it of the masons, the laborers, the bricklayers, the iron workers, ILWU, plumbers and fitters and teamsters.
Okay.
They're from communities all across the island, and they recognize I've been an administrator. I can get the job done.
All right, let me turn it over to Dwight on this one here. Dia is asking, the courts are already backlogged with cases and our prisons are overflowing. Where are you planning to get the resources and the money for that?
Well, as you know, I support a new prison. And my understanding is that prison, half of that prison would have been financed in the private sector. Talking about drug treatment, we absolutely do need drug treatment. But we need drug treatment that will not endanger public safety. If a person can get treatment outside, that's fine. But too often times they fail and fail again. They're put on probation, they go to drug treatment, they mess up, they're put on probation again and again and again. This is endangering public safety. We need to get them drug treatment. That's why I support a new prison, a prison large enough that has meaningful space for meaningful drug treatment policy. That's where we'll get the money for drug treatment.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to RJ.
We absolutely have to stop investing in jails and prisons and start investing in our communities.
I want to give RJ a chance to respond. I'm sorry, we've got a few minutes left, so I want to make sure that I get everybody's voices in there. So RJ, questions about courts being backlogged, cases overflowing, where you're going to get the resources for that?
One of the opportunities that you have as a prosecutor is you get to get that bully pulpit. And, at the end of the day, what a voter has to think about is, are they electing a leader? And is this individual going to be able to go to the legislature, go to the city council and say, listen, we've got these issues. This is a matter of public safety. You've got to provide us with the necessary funds to get the resources in place and the institutions in place that are going to be required to keep the community safe. And, I like, if given the opportunity, I am happy to break that battle. I'm happy to go to the council and say this has to be done, bring the public along with me, because everyone recognizes the importance of public safety. Everyone understands the need to keep our families and our friends safe and to feel comfortable when you're walking down the street at night. And so it really is just a matter of will. And on that matter, I'm going to bring it.
All right, I'm going to turn this question over to Anosh. What happens on day one of the job?
I have a meeting with a number of the people who are the heads of the various divisions. The prosecutor's office is divided into various divisions. One of the misconceptions and one of the main things that has never seemed to ever been mentioned about me is that I did work in the Maui County Prosecutor's office. So I understand there's an appellate division, there's a felony screening division, there's a district court division, there's a circuit court division. So I want to sit down with all of those heads on day one and get a sense from them and ask them, what are the most important cases you're dealing with right now? If there are cases before the ICA, that's the Intermediate Court of Appeals, what are those cases? If you have any cases pending before the Hawaii Supreme Court, what are those cases? I want to talk with the division heads just to get a sense first, right off the top, on day one, of what are the most important cases you have under in your department.
We're going to have to move it on a little bit. Thank you very much. Megan, I want to give you a chance to answer that question. What happens on day one of the job? We've got about a minute left, so about 30 seconds, and 30 seconds to you, Tae.
I am the only candidate who actively assisted the federal government in investigating Keith Kaneshiro and Catherine Kealoha. I understand that Mr. Nadamoto was subpoenaed to testify, but I wasn't subpoenaed. I actively assisted the government. And so the first thing I would do is I would bring everyone together. I would say, this is my vision. We intend to charge all crimes. And I am going to ask the people that were involved with Catherine Kealoha to resign.
And Tae, I'm going to give you about 20 seconds.
On the same question?
Day one of the job.
Okay, day one of the job. I'll be making a list of people that I'm going to let go. There will be a list of people that will be let go. They will be fired. That's it.
And that's concise. Thank you very much. And I know.
Can I respond to that?
Go ahead. You've got 10 seconds.
Can I respond?
Very short.
Okay. I was never subpoenaed before the grand jury while I was a regular deputy, and that is because they know I had nothing to do with the Kealoha scandal.
And I'm so sorry.
After I became acting prosecuting attorney.
I'm afraid we're running out of time. I apologize. I know I'm going to have to cut you off, and I apologize because I know there's more discussion to be had. Mahalo to you for joining us tonight, and thanking our guests, RJ Brown, Steve Alm, Tae Kim, Jacquie Esser, Megan Kau, Dwight Nadamoto, and Anosh Yaqoob. All right, next week on Insights, our guests will be the 3 candidates running for the Honolulu City Council seat, District 5, which includes Palolo Valley in Makiki. Join us then. I'm Laurie Amata for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Ahui ho.